Well, I guess to kind of start off with, since we were just talking about Texas ties, tell me about, I know in the theater you talked about condensing 30 years basically into a year worth of your life is basically
Yes.
kind of the flashback sequences. Can you talk a bit about that autobiographical element to the film, and was it tougher writing that or making up the things surrounding it?
I would say, it was definitely very cathartic to write a lot of the emotional flashbacks, and they were basically deadlifts. And it basically, the film evolved from a session with my therapist, who was like, "You should write," and I was like, "I can't possibly do that." And she was like, "You have a strong voice," and I sat down and started doing like a journal entry that was basically like the flashback of the little girl with her parents fighting. And I thought, 7 hours later, sobbing hysterically, I was like, I'd like to see this on screen because I think that a lot of people live this and they're afraid to talk about it. So that sort of, morphed into a script, over the course of time. Went to a short story and then a script, and I thought, I think I need to do this.
Wow.
So, yeah.
When in your life did you decide to get involved in nonprofit work, and was that a direct reflection of your hardships through life? Was that always kind of
Definitely.
like that's...
It's definitely a love note back to that, and it's my way to reach back and kind of comfort my inner angry 15-year-old girl. So I decided, I was lucky enough to kind of work in Silicon Valley, make some money, and find myself in a position where I was like, I don't need to sling hash anymore for a living if I don't want to. Like, this is fucking awesome. And then I thought, well, I could be like a PTA mom, and I'm a shitty PTA mom. So I really sat down and thought about what I wanted to do, and I thought, I want to leave this world a little better place than I found it. So I wanted to work with these middle school kids. So I worked with middle school kids in shitty neighborhoods, basically. And I found that when I went to go pitch to my well-heeled neighbors who, I was begging for money, they didn't really want to go there emotionally. It was really painful for them to like sink into the skin of a kid whose mom is, an addict, or whose father just got shot, or whose brother, is in jail. So I thought, I feel like this world is at a really critical crossroad, like we're going to war in terms of, who we voted for, who we want to sleep with, that type of thing. And I think we're losing the solidarity of the human experience. We're losing empathy. So I wanted to make a movie that sort of presented a palette of stereotypes, and then we peel back the layers to see, like, we're all pretty much the same.
Keeping on that line of, you mentioned it in the Q&A, showcasing sexuality in two different ways, especially the flashback to what you said you didn't think of as a rape until you saw it on screen, compared to her actually taking over her sexuality and it becoming, her, I don't know if it was a power, but she was in control, at least that situation with the swimmer.
Right.
But can you talk a bit about that?
She told him he couldn't give head, so...
It was sloppy, yeah.
Yeah, it was sloppy. It was bad head.
Was that always in the script idea to showcase that side of sexuality too? It's
part of her, and I think that it's a very timely talking piece in terms of just the way we view sexuality, especially for young girls. I think women in this society, especially teenage girls, are given a lot of mixed messages. Like, you're supposed to be super sexy and make out with a girl, but you're a slut if you do, and you better watch out what you do. And I think that for us as women, we need to just own our sexuality for what it is. Like, it's not for some dude. We shouldn't allow it to be defined by porn or by what some dude tells us is sexy. I think you got to feel it in your bones and you own it then. And I wanted to portray that. This girl is hypersexual. She was pretty damaged. So there's a certain trajectory that her life took and her attitudes about sex. But at a certain point, she could take control of it, and she could be like, this is for me.
Keeping on that theme, control is obviously a big issue in the film about her gaining control, losing control, especially with the drug dealer sequences. And
right.
Noah's great in that movie, by the way.
Noah Sagan, yeah. Who just had a baby.
Wow, really?
All
Wow.
my actors are like, I'm like, guys, you're all having babies.
I'm curious, when she approached you for doing this, did you, I mean, you said in there you were a little apprehensive because she's so tiny, but what made you say yes to her?
You know, so she's such a powerful actress. You know, she's so talented. I mean, I think the thing was, part of it was just, you know, she was the first person who I read. So I had all these other people. I had a lot of people to read. And I loved her, but I kept thinking, like, she looks like she's 12 years old. She's 85 fucking pounds. And then I was actually at the dinner table, staring across the table at my daughter, who was then 16, I believe, and then my stepdaughter, who was like, you know, 17. And I was like, oh shit, she's more their peer than my idea of, like, you know, like a Hollywood college-age girl. Like, she was very vulnerable. She was young. And it was hard for me to conceive of myself in that way. But when that message sort of sank in, I was like, oh, no, it's got to be Annie. It's Annie.
Wow. What about the rest of the casting? I mean, obviously Francisco's got a name. We talked about Noah. I mean, there's a lot of talent. Ron, I mean,
Ron's amazing.
How great was it to get this cast? I mean, how much fun was it?
Incredible. It's, you know, it's an arduous journey, you know, and you're kind of like, I remember I was at the Sundance Catalyst program, and I'm like flipping around in bed, and I'm like, if I don't find the right Brie, this movie is shit. So, you know, my casting director sent me the film of Alira, who played Brie, and I was like, she killed it. Like, she's like, I'll put a pin in her. I'm like, no, make her the offer. Make her the offer. Because she was so fantastic in the role, and she's so beautiful to look at. I think, you know, a lot of it is a chemistry thing, too. It's sort of like, also, can I work with this person? Do I feel like they have the depth to bring this character really to life? And Francesca certainly did. You know, Francesca certainly did. She was incredible. She gave everything to this role. And Ron was the only, like, main character who I did not meet with first. You know, I knew his work because he's got this extensive body of work. And then he read the script, and he was like, I loved it. You know, I mean, he's a working-ass motherfucker, so... You know, I was like, I wonder if he's going to do this, because it's not really a lot of money, but he loved the script, and we really resonated. We spent like 3 hours on the phone. So, and he's still like a great friend of mine. He's like a brother to me now. So, you know, I think this movie really was fantastic in terms of allowing me to build a tribe, too.
Can you share how Ron also impacted the music, not only with just giving, I guess, opening a door for you, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Ron has just been such a friend of this project, such a supporter. You know, he directed MC Light in a music video, and he was, because I was like, I'm out of money, I don't know what to do. And he was like, I'm going to talk to Light. And she came in with her little white dog, and she screened my movie. She's tiny, by the way, and beautiful. And she was like, I'm going to give you some music. So she was so generous, so loving, so kind, and really a supporter of the story and what I was trying to get out there. Moby also gave me some free music, so I was very lucky in that realm. I probably won't be again, but...
Is there any piece of music you just, if I could have just had that one piece of music?
Yes. So the aquarium scene, initially, I really wanted Tangerine Dream.
Wow, okay, yeah.
Love on a Real Train. I wanted that so badly. And we reached out to them, but I think the one guy had passed away, and it was impossible to get. So I thought Summer worked, but and it's a beautiful piece of music. I love that piece of music, but it gave the scene a different tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about shooting in the Bay Area. You mask a lot of, like, ILM. I didn't realize that was the campus. You got to shoot in the aquarium, which is really cool. Working with Brett, I mean, we're kind of familiar with him here locally. I mean, he shot Hellion, and Short Term 12 is one of the, I think, the best kind of indie films.
So talented.
How did it meld working with him and connection to finding the places you were able to shoot in the Bay Area?
So we had a great locations team, and Rick Bosner, who was my producer, had done Fruitvale Station, and he is sort of a beloved staple in the Bay Area, so to speak. So he was really like instrumental in terms of being like, "Hey, Ange," because that scene was originally written for a beach, and he was like, "How about the aquarium?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And Brett was amazing in terms of like helping me to shape the narrative through pictures, so I think, we decided to shoot it really tight because it's a character study. At the end of the day, it's a character study, and we don't have like, a lot of money for big dolly shots and stuff like that. And it wasn't that kind of movie, So he was wonderful in terms of, forming relationships with the actors and, just getting the right angles and getting the right coverage. He was remarkable.
You brought up hash being the drug that you just brought up, but we get to see ecstasy. Can you talk to me about honing in on a specific drug? Because I know, like, I don't know how to put this, but I mean, the 80s was a prime time for seeing a lot of drugs come in through America in different venues, but what made you stick with a specific one like that? And
it's actually the one that I sold.
Yeah. So I wanted to get there without saying that.
It's actually the one that I sold, and it was one that was particularly lucrative, but I also felt that it didn't hurt people because, shrinks were using it. So that was sort of like my thinking back then, which, I mean, I wouldn't recommend making drugs at this point, guys.
Well, I love the line that you did the research. It wasn't on anyone's list for
arrest. It was
arrest.
not on the DEA list of banned controlled substances. It was not.
How much fun was it doing her creating it and the actual visual element of it, or was that just something that just came about?
I
think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I made it purple just because I like purple, and I thought that visually it was arresting. It was not purple in real life. I think that, for me, that process, people were like, we want it to be really, really specific. And I was like, I don't want to make a tutorial for these kids about, like, how to make drugs. So I kind of wanted to gloss over it a little bit, and because it wasn't the focal point of the story. The story was really like the people, the characters. It was their character studies and the relationships and the redemptive power of love. So I wanted to pull attention away from that aspect of just like, this is how you make ecstasy, to this is the human experience.
Getting to the human experience, one of my favorite scenes is when they go over to his family's house for Christmas.
Yeah.
Can you talk about bringing in the familiar aspects to, I think we're much more familiar with Francesca's homestead or, Tommy's homestead. We haven't lived what, you went through on your end. How much fun was it to show her going into those worlds, and how cathartic was it for you? Did you have those experiences? What was it like for you to tackle that as well?
I loved it. Recreating those worlds was very cathartic. Part of it was my production designer he's like one of my best friends now, Rodrigo Cabral, and he really, because I was like, there should be like that plastic shit on the couch, and he was like, yes. So he actually fought with my producer about putting wallpaper up at one point. I remember hearing him, and he was like, it's happening! And I could hear Rick on the other line going like, no, it's not, it's going to be too much. And he was like, no, it's happening, and he hung up. So people were really passionate about building the worlds, and that really showed through. That really shone through. And for me to like guide people into a world that they, maybe you don't really understand what it's like in an Asian American home. But that's pretty much what Christmas is there. By the way, I ate that duck, the whole thing, in the cab ride home.
With the head on there,
so
too.
So hungry. I chewed the whole thing.
I've got to ask, I laughed a lot in this movie.
Good.
I didn't expect to. But tell me a bit about the laughs in it, and how much of that was in your original story idea. Did you always have the sense of humor in it?
Yes. I think I'm fucking hilarious, first of all. But I think that, to the extent that you take people to the dark, you have to allow them a release, and you have to allow them to laugh. So in my household, my daughter and I we've gone through some dark times, but we laugh our fucking asses off. And I think that is one of the saving graces about, being a human being. It's like, it's a beautiful thing about being a human. You can find humor. I remember we had a very, very tragic incident where my ex's brother sort of died precipitously, just like that. And I remember sitting in the hospital, and we were like sobbing hysterically, and then we would recall this like great memory of him, and we'd be laughing hysterically. So I think that's life. I think life is this. And I think I wanted to, I think that you have to release people from the dark if you're going to be, taking them there. So I think, you got to give them the psych ward scene. I think it's a pretty dark scene. It's a painful scene. You got to give them, some release, and and to make them understand that you can laugh.
For My Jade, is that?
That's my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm so happy you caught that.
Yeah. What does it mean to you to make a film that is honoring your daughter in some way, but also giving her another avenue to escape whatever past has already gone through. I think if she sees it, she can relive it just as you lived it.
She's seen it so many times. She actually sat in edit with me, and we watched the same like 2-minute piece like over and over again. She's like, "Mom, Jesus." You know, I think for us it was pretty cathartic. You know, I think it's one of the reasons why I wanted to make the film. So I will share with you that the psych ward scene was basically, it was largely based on my daughter's experiences with anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation. So I talked to her about it, and she was like, "Yeah, Mom, you know, we can talk about it in public, and we can make people understand that you can move through that." And I think that is a really powerful message. And I think that, you know, to be able to tribute her like that, you know, was one of the reasons why I really wanted to make the film.
You know, you mentioned in the Q&A we just had that you didn't want to glorify it either. You wanted to show getting over it and moving on and overcoming it.
Yes.
How important is that to you to showcase that? I think that's one of the great messages of the film.
Hugely. I mean, you know, life can be painful, but the sun always comes out again. And I think that, you know, when we see in media, you know, cases, you know, celebrities who have killed themselves, who have committed suicide, we really tend to, like, you know, focus on what their suicide note was, like, you know, like we kind of romanticize that whole notion of suicide, and you know, I think that there's been a rash of suicides among our young, and we need to address that. So the real story to me is not in what Kate Spade was wearing or what she wrote in the note. It's in the grit and the courage and the tenacity that it takes to fucking move through that. To move through that, to face your demons, to conquer them, and to move through to the other side, and to, you know, to face the light again.
I keep saying with the Q&A, there were so many gold moments. I was thinking in my head when you're saying, in the intro you said reparenting with television. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that. I think we see that in the film with her nostalgia over the Christmas shows, her connection with Brie. I thought was beautiful through the TV.
Wasn't Brie amazing?
Yeah, I think that's one of the best moments, is her just connecting with her just on what's your favorite show, and then telling her about Josie and the Pussycats. That was,
which is a bomb-ass show.
Can you talk to me about how the TV helped you, and now it's kind of crazy. Well, it's not ironic. You're utilizing it to another level.
So I am a kid who was brought up in a fairly. I had a pretty dark background. You know, my father went out. My mother left when I was young, and my father, you know, was working at the restaurant until pretty late, and I was often alone until the wee hours. So it was a lonely time. It was a very anxiety-provoking time, and I think that one of the things that got me through was just watching television, so I could transport myself into a different world. You know, Ma on Little House on the Prairie was my Ma. Like, I was like, oh yeah, that bitch is gonna make me some pie. But I also think that, you know, once a week, you know, despite how dark he got, my father took me to the movies. So I was transported, you know, in that 2 hours, I was definitely transported. So I was offered a new venue. I was offered, you know, just a different perspective, you know, and it offered me hope. It definitely offered me hope. So it guided me through a pretty dark annal of my life. And, you know, I wanted to give back to that.
We talk about fashion in the film and choosing. I mean, I think Francisca's opening when she comes in and the outfit she's wearing with the hat.
With the pink beret.
Oh, I was like, wow.
She was like, I'm not wearing this. And Kit was like, no, you are. And I was like, really, Kit? A pink beret? But it works.
That must have been so much fun to play with that. I mean, the periodic table T-shirt.
Yes.
I think my brother has his from when he was a kid, and it's like, I was like, holy shit.
Or like the Christmas sweater with the balls on it.
Yeah. That's so much gold in just the outfits.
Yeah, you know, Kit Scarbo, who was my costume designer, really was so passionate about this, and we met, she was probably one of the first members of my team who I met with. So she, you know, she was on Project Runway, and she styles for all these big people. She's got this amazing aesthetic, and she really researched the history and what it meant, and you know, how to build character with fashion. So I mean, she killed it. So I mean, we didn't have a lot of money for this. So she actually, the summer before we shot, traveled up and down. She did like a road trip up and down the eastern seaboard, and she like visited all these vintage shops and stuff like that. And she's like, just pulled this gold, just pulled this fucking gold, and did stuff like we were all fighting over that leather jacket. And she's like, no, you can't have it, it's mine. So we all offered our own personal, like that was my bra, who Annie
tossed?
threw back at Francesca. Yes.
Someone brought it in there. It's one of the strongest films we've seen from a woman director.
Oh, thank you.
Asian Film Festival of Dallas this is the second year they've done a woman showcase.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Texas, we have the Women's Film Festival of Texas. Can you talk to me about being a woman behind camera, how important it is to showcase that to the next generation, and hopefully one day we can break some type of ceiling that's never been broken. It seems like, Bigelow's made it, but there's not enough traction, and there's so many talented people, there's so many great filmmakers that just don't get their due. They don't get into festivals. They certainly don't get into theatrical release, which you now have. What does that mean to you?
It's huge. I mean, I think, I'm not like a man hater, and I'm not like, oh, I was so like, people always ask me like, oh, was it tough for you on set because you're a woman? It was not. I had a lot of love on set. I got a lot of respect. I respected everyone else in return. But I do think that, it's a rough industry, and it's an industry that women typically have not been able to break into. So I think to have that voice, to have that specific and unique voice is huge, because it's, it broadens our perspective, and I think that to the extent that you can tell stories from different vantage points, I mean, that's the beauty of film. So I think for women, we have to kick the door down. We have to like not take no for an answer, and we have to, a lot of it I think is we have to take responsibility for the expenses and for the finances. You have to understand that portion of it. You have to be a businesswoman also. So, and I think that, there are so many talented, really wonderful filmmakers who are women who are coming up, and, Nikki Cairo is directing Mulan. Mm-hmm. Patty did Wonder Woman. So I think Wonder Woman was a game changer, because now we understand that women actually can tell, a powerful narrative with action, and have a blockbuster fucking movie. So I think that, we have Ava DuVernay, who puts out beautiful work. We have, women who are like right there and who are I think part of it is also we have to really be bonded, and we have to really fight for each other. Mm. So, I'm thrilled to be a part of that crop.
Was it nice then to see like even people like Greta, who stepped behind the scene and got Oscar credit nomination?
For Lady Bird, for sure.
Dee Reese for Mud.
Yes,
that was one
Mudbound.
of them. I thought that was the best movie.
I loved it. Well, actually, I'm working with Kyle Tequila, who was a producer on my next movie. So, I remember talking to him and hearing about the project, and I was like, fuck yeah. So, Dee's a force. Dee's a force.
Can we ask what's coming up for you and what you're working on?
No. No, I've actually written a script called Blue Blooded. I'm, reworking it, but it's a gritty cop story. I decided, basically what spurred it is I flipped open my computer, and I was like, I'm so tired of seeing that yet another kid of color has been shot dead by the police and we don't give a fuck. So I wanted to write a story that was empathetic to both the cops and the kids. And I started hanging out with all these like awesome New York cops. And, I found, the good thing about cops is like once you're in with them, they'll tell you everything. So we went to like Rangers games. We did shots of, Jack Daniels. It was pretty awesome. So, hey, J-Bods, he told me all kinds of stories. And he actually told me about a kind of a darker annal of the NYPD's history. They actually got sent down to help the NOPD post-Katrina, to assist with like the post-Katrina cleanup. So, and he said, Ange, we were like hardened New York cops. The stuff we saw would fucking make your blood curdle. So there were a lot of incidents of like, just people, cops with PTSD, the people in the streets with PTSD. I think we need to show that, we need to portray that authentically. So, people got shot dead in the street, by cops who were like trigger happy because they had PTSD. So I wanted to take that story and bring it back to New York and just say, like, this becomes part of your DNA, when you witness something like this. I don't want to give too much away, but so I think it's an important social piece. It's a talking piece again, and that's sort of the type of story that I'm interested in telling.
Do you necessarily want to do film, or are you looking at other avenues?
I would love to do TV. I would love, because I think that you get all that real estate to tell story and to come into people's homes and to impact them. I would love to do a series. Yeah.
I've got to ask, what do you watch? What do you keep up with now?
I've just been watching Sharp Objects. I have two. I know two of the young girls who are actresses in that, and I think they're doing a beautiful job. It's April and Violet Brinson, so I don't even know what their names are because I've only watched like 2 episodes, but they've done a beautiful job, and it's fun to be able to see them, throughout the shooting process. I'm a huge fan of Billions. I'm a huge fan of The Affair. I love, of course, Game of Thrones. I loved American Horror Story. I mean, I'll basically watch whatever. I love Handmaid's Tale.
Oh.
I love Handmaid's Tale. I think it's so timely, so beautifully done. And cautionary.
Would you look at directing something you didn't write?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've actually been, privileged enough to, I'm lucky enough to have people like give me their scripts now and say, like, would you like to do this? And, there are so many great stories out there, but I have to keep regrounding and refocusing myself and saying, like, look, I'm a 52-year-old woman. I'm not a 25-year-old kid. Like, I only have so many years to do this. And I'm telling stories for a specific reason. I feel like our society is at a point now where we're lacking empathy, and I think that to the extent that I can inspire empathy, that's what I want to do. So if a great fucking script fell into my lap that fell into line with my ethos, yeah, I'd do it. And there are some scripts that I've said yes to that are great stories, but I'm like, oh man, it's not necessarily. They don't necessarily have the gravitas that I want to be able to to put out there. But yes, I would.
For those that will be able to check this out, tell us how we can keep up with this film, but also keep up with you, Angie.
Yeah, so MDMA, we have a Facebook page, MDMA. We're going to start our social media launch pretty soon, so there'll be a Twitter feed, a hashtag MDMA for Instagram. You can look me up on Facebook. It's Angie Wang.
And you said September for theater?
Yeah.
Or for theatrical?
Yes, in September.
Wow.
And we've also been picked up by Film Independent for a special members-only screening in August, so I'm excited about that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm really stoked.
Well, thank you for bringing it to Dallas. I hope it's been somewhat of a Texas reunion on all aspects.
I've loved it. I had a great time. Thank you so much. I've had a great time.
Please bring whatever projects you have back. We'd love to have you back.
Awesome. Thank you so much.